Some games leave a lasting impression, not because of their length, but because of the unforgettable experiences packed into just a few hours. Each game on this list is a gem you can easily complete in a day, yet they offer stories, challenges, and moments that will stick with you long after the credits roll. So, without further ado, let's get started. So let's kick off this list with Gone Home. It's one of those games that just nails the atmosphere and storytelling in a way that few others do. You're exploring this seemingly empty house, trying to figure out where everyone went. The entire game is just you, alone in this house, and the story slowly unfolds as you piece together clues from letters, notes, and objects left behind. It's like you start to feel this connection to the family, even though you never actually see them. The game has this eerie vibe, like you're half expecting something to jump out at you, but it never does. That tension is so well done, and the best part? You can finish it in about 2 hours. It's a short experience, but it's packed with emotion. The story is really what gets you. It's more than just a mystery. It's a deeply personal tale about family, love, and identity. I remember finishing it and just sitting there like, wow. It's a game that stays with you long after you've played it. If you're into narrative-driven games that make you think and feel, Gone Home is an absolute must-play. Alright, so next on the list is Sayonara Wild Hearts. This is one of those games that feels like a shot of pure adrenaline straight to the heart. It's a rhythm game, but like not your typical one. Imagine you're in a neon-soaked world, zipping around on motorcycles, skateboards, and even swords while this incredible pop soundtrack pumps in the background. Each level feels like its own little music video, with the beats perfectly synced to your moves. What really stands out, though, is the style. The game's visuals are this wild mix of colors and shapes that just pull you in, and it all flows so seamlessly that you can't help but get lost in it. It's super short, like maybe an hour, but man, this could be the best hour of your life. It's like every second is just packed with energy and excitement. The soundtrack alone is worth the experience. It's that good. And if you're into games that are more about the vibe and feeling than anything else, this game is a ride you absolutely need to take. It's an experience that leaves you buzzing long after it's over. Next up, we have Mirror's Edge. Mirror's Edge is one of those games that just makes you feel like an absolute badass. You're this runner named Faith, dashing across rooftops, sliding under pipes, and wall running through a futuristic city that's all sleek and white. The whole game is built around this parkour-style movement, and it's so smooth that once you get the hang of it, you feel unstoppable. What I really love is the first-person perspective. It makes every jump, every risky leap between buildings feel so intense, like you're right there in Faith's shoes. And the city? It's so minimalist and clean, but there's this undercurrent of something darker going on, which adds to the tension. The story isn't anything groundbreaking, but it's enough to keep you moving forward, and really, it's the gameplay that steals the show. And the best part? You can finish the whole thing in a day. It's the kind of game where you sit down, get totally immersed, and before you know it, you're at the end credits. If you've ever wanted to feel like a parkour pro in a sleek, futuristic world, Mirror's Edge is the game for you. Another game that I highly recommend is Inside. Inside is one of those games that just grips you from the moment you start playing. You're this kid running through a dark dystopian world, and everything about it is just so unsettling. There's no dialogue, no explanations, just this eerie atmospheric world that you're trying to navigate through. The game's puzzles are smart, not too tough, but they really make you think. And the way the game builds tension is just masterful. You're constantly on edge, wondering what's going to happen next. The art style is minimalist, but every detail feels purposeful. And then there's the sound design. It's sparse but super effective, adding to that creepy vibe. What really gets me is how the game tells its story without saying a word. It's all in the visuals and the situations you find yourself in, and it's short too. Like you can finish it in just maybe 4 to 5 hours. But those hours are packed with some of the most memorable moments I've experienced in a game. If you're into dark, atmospheric games that keep you thinking long after you've finished, Inside is definitely worth your time. Up next, we have this single-player first-person mystery from Camposano. Firewatch is a game that's all about atmosphere and story. You play as Henry, a guy who's taken a job as a fire lookout in the Wyoming wilderness. It's just you, your walkie-talkie, and the voice on the other end, Delilah, your supervisor. The game's world is gorgeous. These lush forests, towering mountains, and sunsets that just take your breath away. But beneath all that beauty is a story that's, well, surprisingly emotional and intense. What I love about Firewatch is how it makes you feel so isolated, yet connected at the same time. Your only contact is Delilah, and the conversations you have with her feel so real. There's this underlying mystery that keeps you on edge, wondering what's really going on out there in the woods. And the best part, you can experience the whole thing in a day. It's also damn short game, but it's packed with moments that stick with you. To be honest, I was sad when I finished this game for the first time. I'm very attached with the characters of the game. Well, I think it's now time for you to have this experience as well. Up next is Furi. Furi is this fast-paced, ultra-stylized game that's all about boss fights. Like, seriously, the entire game is just a series of epic battles against these insane, beautifully designed bosses. This game reminds me of Sekiro, but it's much easier, in my opinion. And what's cool is how each fight feels unique. Each boss has its own set of moves, its own rhythm, so you're constantly on your toes, adapting and reacting. The game's got this neon cyberpunk aesthetic that's just so cool, and the soundtrack, it's this pulsating electronic mix that just gets your blood pumping. The combat is tight, responsive, and yeah, it's tough as nails, but it's the kind of challenge that feels fair. Every time you get knocked down, you want to get back up and try again because you know it's possible to win. And the story, while minimal, adds this layer of intrigue that keeps you pushing forward. You can beat it in a day, but that day is going to be filled with some of the most intense, satisfying gameplay out there. If you're into fast, challenging action games with a killer style, Furi is a must-play. Next up, we have Superliminal. Superliminal is one of those games that really messes with your mind in the best way possible. It's a puzzle game where perspective is everything. You're in this dreamlike world, and the way you perceive objects literally changes their size and shape. Like, you'll pick up a small object, and suddenly it's huge because you were looking at it from a certain angle. It's wild. The game constantly throws these clever perspective-based puzzles at you, and it's so satisfying when you finally figure them out. The whole thing feels like you're inside a surreal art piece, with these strange, minimalistic environments that just add to the dreamlike vibe. And the humor? It's subtle, but definitely there, with this voice that guides you through the puzzles in a way that's both helpful and a little sarcastic. The game is short, probably around 2 or 3 hours, but it's one of those experiences that sticks with you. If you're into unique, mind-bending puzzles, Superliminal is definitely a game you need to check out. Next on the list is the Resident Evil 3 Remake. The Resident Evil 3 Remake is an intense, action-packed ride from start to finish. I know some of you may find this game as a long game, but if you focus on objectives, this can be easily completed maybe in around 6 to 8 hours. In my case, I managed to beat it in around 7 hours, and yeah, I also died a lot. You're playing as Jill Valentine, trying to survive the nightmare of Raccoon City while being hunted by this relentless towering monster known as Nemesis. The game is all about high-stakes survival, with moments of sheer terror as Nemesis bursts through walls chasing you down. It's a bit more action-focused than the original, but that just adds to the adrenaline. The graphics are stunning. Everything from the detailed environments to the terrifying creature designs looks incredible. And the atmosphere is damn thick with tension. The story isn't groundbreaking, the usual Resident Evil style, but it does a great job of keeping you engaged as you try to escape the city. If you're a fan of survival horror and love that mix of action and terror, Resident Evil 3 Remake is a must-play. Up next, we have Carrion. This is another horror game on this list, but in a pixel art style. Unlike the previous game, Carrion flips its head by putting you in the role of the monster. And honestly, it's surprisingly fun. You play as this writhing, tentacled creature, tearing your way through a lab in an effort to escape. The fun part? You're not just running away, you're hunting down the scientists and soldiers who are trying to contain you. The 2D pixel art might look simple, but it's super effective in creating this dark, oppressive atmosphere. Every time you slither through a vent or lunge at an unsuspecting guard, you feel this primal satisfaction. What's really cool is how the game lets you grow stronger as you progress. You absorb new abilities like being able to shoot webs or dash through obstacles, which opens up new ways to terrorize your enemies. And the level design is tight, with areas that loop back on themselves in a way that keeps things interesting without ever getting confusing. If you've ever wanted to be the monster in a horror movie, Carrion delivers that fantasy perfectly. Up next, we have What Remains of Edith Finch. This one is a pretty intense and emotional game. You play as Edith, the last surviving member of the Finch family, exploring the old mysterious family home. Each room you enter is like a chapter in a book, telling the story of a different family member and how they met their untimely end. The way the game blends narrative and gameplay is just brilliant. One moment you're flying through the sky as a child's imagination takes flight, and the next you're reliving a day in the life of a doomed factory worker. The stories are, well, they're short but incredibly powerful. I mean, every one of them will surely hit you in a different way. The art style is gorgeous, with each section of the house feeling like a snapshot of the person who lived there. The game is about 2 to 3 hours long, but it's an experience that I think will also stays with you after you complete it. If you're into narrative-driven games that make you think and feel, What Remains of Edith Finch is an absolute must-play. Up next is Shredder's Revenge. If you grew up loving the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, then Shredder's Revenge is basically a love letter to your childhood. This game is a throwback to the classic arcade beat-em-ups, but with modern touches that make it feel fresh and exciting. You can play as any of the 4 turtles, each with their own unique moves and combos, and just go to town on waves of enemies. The pixel art is absolutely stunning, full of vibrant colors and smooth animations that make every punch and kick feel impactful. The gameplay is also pure chaotic fun, especially when you're playing with friends. The game supports up to 6 players at once, and it's just a blast seeing everyone team up to take down iconic villains like Bebop and Rocksteady. The levels are short but packed with action, and the whole thing can be finished in a few hours, which is perfect for a quick gaming session. The music is another highlight. Catchy upbeat tunes that keep the energy high from start to finish. Whether you're a longtime fan of the Turtles or just love a good beat 'em up, Shredder's Revenge is an absolute must-play. Next on the list is Gris. Gris is an emotional journey wrapped in a stunning piece of art. You play as a young girl navigating through a world that feels like it's been pulled straight from a watercolor painting. The whole game is about grief and loss, but it's presented in such a subtle, beautiful way that you can't help but be drawn in. The visuals are just breathtaking, with every frame of this game could be a painting you'd want to hang on your wall. And the animation is so fluid, it's like watching a dream come to life. What really sets Gris apart is how it uses its gameplay to tell the story. As you progress, you gain new abilities that help you navigate the world, and each one feels like a step towards healing. The soundtrack is equally stunning, with haunting melodies that perfectly complement the game's emotional tone. The whole experience is pretty short, but it's one of those games that you'll be thinking about long after you've finished. If you're into games that are as much about feeling and atmosphere as they are about gameplay, Gris is an absolute must-play. Up next, we have Katana Zero. This game is an absolute must-play in my opinion, especially if you love samurai assassin games. You play as a samurai assassin with the ability to manipulate time, and it's just as cool as it sounds. The game is fast-paced, with you slicing through enemies in stylish, bloody combat that's as satisfying as it is challenging. Each level feels like a puzzle, where you have to figure out the best way to take down your enemies before they even have a chance to react. And if you mess up, well, you can just rewind time and try again, which adds this layer of strategy that keeps things fresh. The story is surprisingly deep, full of plot twists and turns that keep you hooked from start to finish. The pixel art style is vibrant and full of detail, with each level offering something new and exciting. With its fast-paced, challenging action, Katana Zero is a game that I will never get tired of recommending. Next up, we have this game that I consider a hidden gem, Call of Juarez Gunslinger. This game takes the Wild West setting and runs with it in the best way possible. You play as Silas Greaves, a grizzled bounty hunter telling tales of his adventures. And the game has this really cool narrative twist, where the story changes based on how he remembers it. One minute you're fighting off a gang of outlaws, and the next, the story shifts, and suddenly there's a whole new set of challenges to deal with. It keeps you on your toes, and makes each level feel fresh and unpredictable. The shooting mechanics are tight, with a satisfying weight to the guns, and there's this neat combo system that rewards you for stylish kills. The duels are also intense, nerve-wracking standoffs that feel like classic Western showdowns. The game's art style is like a comic book brought to life, with bold colors and exaggerated characters that really pop. The story can be completed in about 5 to 8 hours, and I can tell you that it's pure fun. If you're a fan of Westerns or just love a good first-person shooter with a unique twist, Call of Juarez Gunslinger is a must-play. Up next is Vanquish. Before you jump into this game, let me tell you that you're about to experience a pure, unadulterated action. You play as Sam Gideon, a soldier equipped with a high-tech suit that lets you slide around at ridiculous speeds, slow down time, and pull off some of the most insane moves you'll ever see in a shooter. The game's all about momentum. You're constantly on the move, dodging bullets, and finding creative ways to take down your enemies. It's a thrill ride that never lets up, along with the combat that is so fluid and fast-paced that you can't help but get completely absorbed in it. The story is, well, it's not the main draw here, but it's serviceable enough to keep things moving. What really stands out are these set pieces, massive battles, crazy boss fights, and moments that just make you go, did that really just happen? The graphics are sharp with a slick, futuristic design that complements the game's high-octane action. And the best part? You can knock it out in about 6 hours, making it perfect for a single sitting if you're in the mood for some non-stop action. If you're a fan of fast-paced shooters, Vanquish is a must-play. Next is Ruiner. Ruiner is a top-down shooter that just oozes style. Set in a dark cyberpunk world, you play as a silent protagonist on a mission to rescue your kidnapped brother. The game is fast-paced, brutal, and incredibly satisfying. You're constantly on the move, dashing around, dodging bullets, and taking down enemies with a mix of guns, melee weapons, and special abilities. The combat is challenging but fair, and there's this awesome feeling of power when you pull off a perfect combo. The game's art style is stunning, with a mix of neon lights, dark shadows, and a gritty dystopian atmosphere that really pulls you into its world. And the soundtrack? It's this intense driving mix of electronic beats that perfectly matches the game's relentless pace. The story is a bit cryptic, but it's engaging enough to keep you hooked, with plenty of twists and turns along the way. Similar to the other games on this list, this one is relatively a short game, but it's a wild ride from start to finish. Next one is Journey. Let's talk about Journey. This game is like a warm, soothing hug that just happens to be wrapped in some of the most stunning visuals I've ever seen. You'll glide through golden sands, scale snowy mountains, and all of it with this sense of awe that just keeps building. It's the kind of experience where, every step you take feels important, and the best part? You can finish it in just a few hours. One thing that Journey nails is the atmosphere. It's like you're in this dreamlike world that's full of mystery. The soundtrack is also incredible. Each note seems to pull at your heartstrings in just the right way. And if you're lucky, you might even bump into another player on the same path as you. There's no talking, no usernames, just two wanderers sharing a moment. It's weirdly powerful. I think that's why Journey sticks with you. It's not just about finishing the game, it's about the feelings it leaves behind. If you haven't played it yet, trust me, it's worth setting aside a couple of hours to just lose yourself in it. Next on the list is OPUS Rocket of Whispers. Imagine waking up in a world where the snow has buried almost everything, and all that's left is silence. OPUS Rocket of Whispers invites you into this hauntingly beautiful world, where you're tasked with building a rocket to send the souls of the dead into space. Now, it's not a game that's going to have you on the edge of your seat, but that's exactly why it's so special. There's a certain calmness to it, a meditative pace that lets you really sink into the story. What I loved most was how it made me feel so connected to these characters I'd never met. As you search for rocket parts, you uncover memories and fragments of lives that once were. It's like piecing together a puzzle, only the reward isn't just completing the rocket, it's understanding the weight of the past and the hope that lingers in this quiet, frozen world. The whole experience lasts maybe 5 hours, but the emotions it stirs up, they'll stick with you for a lot longer. Up next is Cocoon. Cocoon is like stepping into a world that constantly shifts under your feet, both literally and metaphorically. The first time I dove into one of the cocooned worlds, I felt this sense of awe, like I just cracked open a mystery box and found another inside. Each layer of the game is a puzzle in itself, but what's truly genius is how these layers interact with one another. You're not just solving puzzles, you're thinking about how one world's mechanics affect another. It's kind of like a Russian doll, but in game form, with each layer more intriguing than the last. Visually, Cocoon is a treat, with environments that feel alien yet inviting, pulling you deeper into the game's secrets. And the sound design? Let's just say wearing headphones is a must. The game's not long. I completed it within 5 hours as far as I remember, but it's dense with ideas, each more fascinating than the last. By the time you emerge from this layered adventure, you'll feel like you've traveled through not just one world, but many, each more complex and beautiful than the last. Next up, we have the campaign mode in Titanfall 2. Now, here's a game that completely took me by surprise. The first Titanfall was all about the multiplayer, so when Titanfall 2 came out with a campaign, I wasn't expecting much. But I was totally wrong. This campaign is a masterclass in how to do first-person shooting right. Each level introduces a new mechanic, a new twist that keeps things fresh and exciting. Remember the time travel level? That blew my mind. Switching between past and present to solve puzzles and outmaneuver enemies? That's something I'll never forget. But it's not just the gameplay that stands out. The relationship between you and BT, your Titan, adds a layer of depth that you wouldn't expect in a shooter. By the end of the game, I was genuinely attached to that big hunk of metal. And don't even get me started on the level design. It's varied, it's innovative, and it never overstays its welcome. So, if you haven't tried it yet, then consider this as the sign you've been waiting for. Next on the list is Surgeon Simulator. Okay, Surgeon Simulator is just ridiculous in the best way possible. If you've ever wondered what it's like to perform surgery with the motor skills of a toddler, this game's for you. The controls are deliberately awkward, turning even the simplest task into a chaotic mess. You'll find yourself accidentally flinging scalpels across the room or dropping a lung on the floor, and it's damn hilarious. There's something incredibly satisfying about how badly you can botch an operation and still feel like you've accomplished something. What's great is how it doesn't take itself seriously at all. You're not playing Surgeon Simulator for realism, you're playing it to see how far you can push the absurdity. And trust me, it gets pretty absurd. The game is full of hidden surprises and Easter eggs that add to the fun, making each playthrough a little different from the last. It's the perfect game for a quick laugh, especially with friends watching your surgical skills in action. Up next, we have Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. This game is all about going over the top. Forget stealth because this game is about fast-paced, stylish action with a katana that can slice through anything. You play as Raiden, a cyborg ninja who's out to take down a group of rogue operatives, and the gameplay is just insane. The combat is fluid, brutal, and incredibly satisfying. You can literally cut through enemies and the environment with precision, which never gets old, no matter how many times you do it. The boss fights are some of the most memorable I've ever played. Each one is a spectacle, with huge over-the-top designs and epic music that gets your blood pumping. The story's as wild as you'd expect from a Metal Gear game, full of twists, turns, and a healthy dose of philosophy, but it never slows down the action. The whole game is about 7 hours long, but it's so densely packed with excitement that you'll feel like you've been on a much longer journey. If you're in the mood for a game that's all about style and intensity, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is where it's at. Next is the Little Nightmares series. There's something about Little Nightmares that just gets under your skin. It's a horror game, sure, but it's not about jump scares or gore. Instead, it's all about atmosphere, the kind that makes you feel uneasy from the moment you start playing. You're this tiny, vulnerable character, navigating through a world that's both grotesque and beautiful, filled with monstrous figures that want nothing more than to catch you. What really struck me was how the game uses scale to make you feel so small and powerless, yet determined to survive. Little Nightmares 2 takes that same formula and dials it up, introducing new characters and environments that are even more twisted. The puzzles are clever, the visuals are hauntingly gorgeous, and the story, though subtle, is deeply unsettling. Both games are pretty short, clocking in at around 4 hours each, but they're so rich in atmosphere that you'll be thinking about them long after you've put the controller down. If you're a fan of horror that leans more into mood than outright scares, Little Nightmares is an experience you won't want to miss. Up next, we have Tiny Room Stories Town Mystery. Now this is one of those games that sneaks up on you. At first, it seems like a simple puzzle game, but as you dig deeper, you realize there's a whole mystery unfolding. You're an investigator, returning to your hometown only to find it completely abandoned. The game has this cool diorama-style presentation where you're rotating and zooming into tiny rooms to uncover clues. It's kind of like playing with a dollhouse, but with a much darker twist. The puzzles are smartly designed, each one more challenging than the last, but never unfair. What really hooked me, though, was the story. It's doled out piece by piece, keeping you guessing right up until the end, and the ending, let's just say, it's worth sticking around for. Up next, we have A Short Hike. If you ever need a break from the craziness of life, a short hike is like a breath of fresh air. You're playing as a little bird named Claire, exploring a peaceful, pixelated island as you make your way to the top of a mountain. The whole game is about taking it easy, going at your own pace, and just enjoying the simple pleasures of exploration. There's no rush, no pressure, just you, the trails, and the sound of the wind in the trees. The island is full of charming little characters to meet and secrets to discover. But the real joy comes from the freedom to just wander around. You can glide through the air, swim in the lake, or climb up cliffs, whatever feels right in the moment. The game's art style is wonderfully simple, with bright, cheery colors that make the whole world feel welcoming. You can finish a short hike in just a couple of hours, but it's one of those games that feels like a mini vacation for your mind. Next up is Katamari Damacy REROLL. Alright, so Katamari Damacy REROLL is probably one of the quirkiest games you'll ever play. Imagine this. You're a tiny prince rolling a sticky ball called a Katamari that picks up anything it touches, from thumbtacks to entire buildings. The goal? Roll up enough stuff to turn your Katamari into a new star or planet, all because your dad, the king of all cosmos, accidentally destroyed them in a cosmic mishap. The game is just ridiculous in the most delightful way. The controls are a bit tricky at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's all about creating the biggest, most absurd Katamari you can. What I love about Katamari Damacy REROLL is its sense of humor. Everything about the game, from the whimsical art style to the funky soundtrack, is designed to make you smile. And the best part? You can finish it in a single sitting, making it the perfect game for when you want something lighthearted and utterly unique. Whether you're rolling up sushi, school children, or skyscrapers, this game is pure chaotic fun. It's an experience that's so odd and joyful that you'll find yourself grinning the entire time. Moving forward, we have Oxenfree. Oxenfree is one of those games that sneaks up on you, and before you know it, you're completely sucked into its world. It's a supernatural thriller where you play as Alex, a teenager who, along with her friends, accidentally opens a ghostly rift while exploring a mysterious island. The game's story is just fantastic, filled with twists and turns that keep you on edge. The in-game's dialogue system is also quite unique. Conversations flow naturally, and your choices genuinely affect how the story unfolds, which made me feel like I was in the middle of a supernatural mystery movie. The atmosphere is, well, incredibly eerie. The art style is minimalist but effective, and the sound design is also downright haunting. There's this constant feeling of dread as you explore the island, piecing together what's happened. The way the game plays with time and reality adds a whole other layer of intrigue that kept me hooked from start to finish. If you're into stories that keep you guessing and characters that feel real, you should give this game a shot. Concluding this list, we have Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons Remake. Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons is an emotional roller coaster, to say the least. You control two brothers simultaneously, each mapped to a different analog stick, and the way the game uses this unique mechanic to tell its story is just brilliant. At first, it feels like a simple adventure game, but as you journey through its beautiful, fantastical world, you start to realize that the controls are more than just a gimmick. They're a crucial part of the narrative. The bond between the brothers is at the heart of the story, and the way you have to coordinate their movements makes you feel that connection in a very real way. The game's world is filled with stunning vistas and memorable encounters, each adding a layer to the story. And without giving anything away, there's a moment in this game that hit me like a ton of bricks. I mean, there's a scene that I think will also stick with your heart. That's how powerful this game can deliver its message. So, if you want this kind of stuff, then please try Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. If you enjoyed this list, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. And hey, if you have any game suggestions, please let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.